Hey guys, what's going on? Back with another video. How's everybody doing? It is the Wild Card Weekend. Wild Card Weekend is upon us here. It starts in a couple days. It is this weekend that the playoffs beginning in the NFL. It's that time of the year. A lot to talk about here. A lot of picks we're gonna do. There's four picks. There's four games between 8 teams, two AFC games and two NFC games. With the AFC matchups happening on Saturday, the NFC matchups happening on Sunday. We're going to figure out who's moving on to the divisional round. Bunch of interesting things to get into here. The most interesting thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that this is the first time in 10 years that the New England Patriots will be playing on Wild Card Weekend. Now, for a lot of teams in the NFL, like the Bengals and the Lions and the Cowboys and and the Buccaneers and you have to excuse my terrible Stephen A. Smith imitation. I was watching that video, which I don't know how many times I've seen it in a row at this point, where he talks about how you gotta stay off the weed, and now I've got Stephen A. Smith stuck in my head, so should probably get that checked out. But nonetheless, we do have some games here that I wanted to get into. But like I was saying, this is the first time in 10 years that the Patriots have played on Wild Card Weekend, and as I was saying, for a lot of teams, that'd be great news. It's like, oh wow, we've made the playoffs for the first time in forever. The Lions, the Buccaneers, the Bengals, the Cowboys. Just these teams that never really do anything. It's like, oh wow, we're in the playoffs. No. The reason the Patriots have not played on Wild Card Weekend, for the first, that this is the first time in 10 years, it's not because they haven't been to the playoffs for the first time in 10 years. It's because they're one of the top two seeds, or they have been every year for the last 10 years. This is the first time they haven't had a first round bye. The first time they've been the 3 seed or lower. For the first time in a decade. It's not an exaggeration. It's been exactly 10 years. It was the end of the 2009 season, which was the last time that the Patriots were a wild card team. They've been one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC every year ever since. And they're 12-4 this year. They were 12-4 a lot of years in a row. Usually, that's good enough for one of the top 2 seeds. Some, a lot of times it's good enough for the number 1 seed, or it has been for a lot of years running now. However, this year, you had the Ravens and the Chiefs. I gotta stop with the Stephen A. Smith nonsense now. But, so it's, it's kind of unfamiliar territory here. They're gonna be hosting the Tennessee Titans on Saturday night. But to be honest with you, I love this Saturday football thing. I know, traditionally, NFL's on Sunday, college is on Saturday, high school's on Friday. The Monday night, the Thursday night game, that's kind of how it tends to go. But I'll watch a Saturday night. I love it. I think it's great. Put it on. I'll watch them. It's tremendous. But yeah, so it's it is what it is. But they're playing on Saturday night. You have Buffalo, Houston playing Saturday afternoon, 4:35 Eastern time. Minnesota and New Orleans Sunday at 1:05, and then Sunday afternoon, 4:40 p.m. Seattle at Philadelphia. Which is kind of weird how the afternoon game on Saturday between the Bills and the Texans is at 4:35, but then the afternoon game on Sunday is 5 minutes later at 4:40 between the Seahawks. I don't really understand what the 5 minutes is doing there. The same thing with the Vikings and the Saints on Sunday. Usually a 1:00 game is a 1:00 game, and this one's 1:04. What is this, baseball? We're starting at like a 1:07 pitch. First pitch. I don't know about that, but. Anyways, here we are, Wild Card Weekend. So I want to go through, these games. I know we talked a little bit about the Patriots there, but I do want to get into the first game first. The Bills at the Texans. So the Bills have really played, except for the last couple weeks of the season, that was a little rough. But the Bills, really for the first time in forever, have shown a lot of promise this year. Really stout defense, really great, secondary. Really the only problem, I don't want to say the only problem, it's being a little bit, presumptuous, if you will, but the problem on this team is the quarterback. It's Allen, all right? The guy's he's not terrible. He's not out there like friggin' Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, throwing picks every 5 minutes, but if he's got the ball in his hands with, a minute 54 on the clock on your 30-yard line and you need a touchdown, it ain't happening. If this guy has to drop back and pass, and make some big boy throws down the field against a pretty good defense, it's just not, it ain't happening with this guy. You know what I mean? He's not terrible. He's not going to lose you the game, but he's not going to win you the game. And so I feel like it's just a waste of a great defense, in Buffalo, because this is really first time in forever that this team has really, played well. It has been a compelling team. where, there's a lot, a lot to get into, a lot to be excited about, in Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo hasn't been particularly good for 20 years. Well, actually more. Oh, wait. Yeah, today's January 1st, 2020. Yeah, it's 25 years, actually. Man. But yeah, so it's been, it's kind of how it's been, with the Bills. And so it's the first time in forever that it's we're in the playoffs. They're a contender as much as, I don't say as much as anybody else, but as much as this friggin' Texans team that they're playing here. But I mean, that's really what's going to come down to is if the offense can put up, 20, just the score's got a 2 in front of it. The defense needs to be able to do its job, and it's really just a question of whether or not the offense is going to, with Allen and with the pieces that they have there, be able to put enough together to allow the defense to shine and kind of help them get the win, which sounds a lot like New England, which sounds a lot like I don't know, Seattle's basically all Russell Wilson. But sometimes you see these kinds of teams, and it's kind of a mixed bag, in terms of results, from teams like that. Then you look at the Texans on the other side here, and you just kind of. Well, actually, before I go through that, I just want to go through the Bills, season here. So the Bills finished second in the AFC East at 10-6. Their losses this year, so the worst. This is what the problem is. They lost 13-6 to the Bills, in Week 17, which I don't really believe that the Bills had anything to play for there, but 6 points, that's not really, it's not really going into the playoffs on a strong note here at all. And then they lost to the Patriots, who they almost beat earlier in the season. They lost to them in Week 16, which, I mean, it looked like a tale of two teams. I mean, this Bills team you saw in Week 17 compared to the one that you saw in Week 4 when they played New England. They almost beat New England in that game. And then in Week 16, they were getting pushed all around. They lost to the Ravens, I believe, in Week 14, excuse me. And then they some other losses. The Browns, they lost to the Browns. The Eagles, they lost 31-13. Again, they lost to New England earlier in the year. And so it's been, they've had some good wins though. You have to kind of point that out. Beating, they beat the Titans, who we know are a feisty team. I think, they kind of blossomed later in the year with this resurgent Ryan Tannehill, which I don't think is something I really think that's an expression I ever thought I would utter. But they're legit. So they beat them. They had a good win there. Good win over the Cowboys. Good win over the Steelers. But other than that, you beat the Broncos. You lost to the Jets. You beat up on the Dolphins. Patriots couldn't even beat the friggin' Dolphins. It's like automatic. Every year, Week 17, Patriots lose to the Dolphins. Unbelievable. But you kind of go through these games. You beat the Bengals. You beat the Giants. These teams kind of suck, all right? But anyways, you look at the other side of the coin here. You look at this Houston Texans team, which I've always been a fan of Deshaun Watson. You had J.J. Watt get reactivated recently, which the difference, not only, in terms of skill and talent and whatnot that he brings to the team and the fact that he makes the defense better, but just that emotional energy that the guy has. I mean, I was reading yesterday about how he gave a speech to the team when he was coming back off injured reserve right in time for the playoffs. Your guy brings a lot to that team, and he's a tremendous player. So we'll kind of see how that helps the team. But the Texans they have some losses here where it's kind of concerning. Week 17, they got blown out by the Titans. Week 16, you barely beat the Jameis Winston pick machine Buccaneers. Okay, Week 15, you barely beat the Titans, which I didn't know they play. I know they're divisional opponents. They play each team in the division twice, but I didn't know you could play a team 2 weeks after you just played them. That's kind of odd. I don't know. Has the team ever played another team in their division 3 times in a year? So twice during the regular season and the playoffs. I wonder if that could even happen. But, anyways, then they got blown out by the Broncos at the beginning of December. They did beat the Patriots. They beat the Colts. Blown away, embarrassed by the Ravens, 41-7. You barely beat the Raiders. You lost to the Colts. You beat the Chiefs. Okay, that's legit. But I'm pretty sure that was when Mahomes wasn't there. You beat the snot out of the Falcons, 53 points, 53-32. You lost to the Panthers, so it's kind of, you lost to the Saints, but you made it a close game. So you kind of go through that, schedule, strength of schedule. You kind of look at, if they just beat up on the bad teams and lost to the good teams, or, vice versa, anything's possible. And you can kind of figure out a lot about a team by doing that. And I kind of see with this Texans team that they're inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like, they can go out there with Deshaun Watson, they can be lighting it up, and defense can play great, or they get blown out. As far as this game goes, I think that Houston's offense is much more high-powered than Buffalo. I mean, even though I think Buffalo's got a really good defense, I mean, I can see, you've got, this is the playoffs, you're emptying the bucket here, which is why I'm pretty sure since 2012, I don't think a wild card team has, it's either a wild card team hasn't made it to the Super Bowl or a wild card team hasn't won the Super Bowl. But part of it is, you don't get the bye week at the beginning of the, first week of the playoffs in the wild card round. You don't get to rest and strategize and watch film and do all that. Since it's the playoffs, you kind of have to empty the bucket in every game because, if you don't, your season, could very well end. And so by the time, if you make it to the conference championship game, you got everything on film. You're not as right. You're playing a road game. It's a steep disadvantage to be playing in the wild card round to begin with. And so I look at this Bills team. This isn't their year. They don't have. I don't think they have the offense. I feel like the Texans, if you've got, the week to, I know it's the same week that everybody else has, but if you can look at the film and say, okay, this is what we do. This is what we've kind of been, kind of holding back on, for the postseason. I just feel like the Texans can look at this and say, okay, let's look at, this Buffalo defense. All right, we're going to call some of these. We're going to do some of these. They're going to have some, like the first, couple drives of the game, perhaps you'll have, completely schemed up. You have them schemed, like Stephen A. Smith might say. And you'll be ready to go. And I just feel like when push comes to shove, this Texans offense has got a lot more firepower than the Bills. Even though the Bills defense is pretty good, I just feel like, this one's going to be won like 27-20. Yeah, like 27-20, something like that. In favor of the Texans. It's in Houston, which, that helps, doesn't hurt. So, I have the Texans winning this game. Next game up, Tennessee Titans at the New England Patriots. So the last time these teams played was in Week 10 of last year. The New England Patriots got completely blown out of the building down there in Tennessee. I remember watching this game. I was at a party, and I was watching that game. That was the game that was on locally, and so I'm watching this game. And they got completely trashed, which... If you saw the Dolphins game last week, which, was Brian Flores, was previously the Patriots assistant coach, Mike Vrabel, coach of the Tennessee Titans, previous longtime Patriots defensive player. You saw they completely smacked the Patriots around last year. The Lions last year completely smacked the Patriots around, completely embarrassed them in Detroit, and you had Matt Patricia, former Patriots defensive coordinator. And what you see in these games is, a lot of times, the Patriots are very good. They win almost all the time. But when they go up against guys who, former assistants who know, because New England's strategy, their scheme, their fundamentals have not changed very much in a really long time. I mean, they're one of these teams like Seattle, like Dallas, which is not a good thing in their case, like Pittsburgh, who, their system is their system. You know what I mean? And, in New England's case, you have a former assistant who goes to another team and plays against you, they know where the bodies are buried on your defense. Like, they know, okay, there's certain plays, they could just never get right on defense. If we call some of these, when I was there, we could just never get that one to work. And so they call those plays, and they get embarrassed. And I feel like with the Patriots, the problems that they've always had, forever, defensively is, anything that kind of tests the speed or the speed of the defense to kind of not get around the edge but go from one side of the field to the other to move laterally because they have slow linebackers in New England, so crossers, slants, RPOs, misdirections. I mean, you think about that the Super Bowl 52 against the Eagles, they couldn't get a stop the whole game because what did the Eagles do? RPOs, bunches, stacks, crossers, misdirections, trick plays, anything where your linebackers have to figure out, is it going to the left, is it going to the where's it going, and by the time they figure out they're too lead ass, too slow to get around the edge, and teams can just get 5-6 yards at a time. That's how you beat New England. And I think if you're a Patriots fan, it has to be one of the most frustrating things that it seems like in all those games, whether it was the Eagles Super Bowl or the Panthers in 2013, a couple, well, I guess now it was 3 years, 2017 season. The Eagles, the Texans, the Chiefs, these games where when they lose, they almost always lose the same way because of the same things. Now, that doesn't go back to like those giant Super Bowls. I mean, that was really because of, Coughlin and Spagnuolo in the stout defense there. But in recent years, the Patriots don't lose often, but when they do, it's because of the same things. And so you have a kind of a perfect recipe to beat New England coming in here. You have the Titans, who had no problem doing it last year. I mean, the Titans, I don't even think they made the playoffs last year. The Tennessee Titans, they're not locks to really win any games. It's not like the Ravens or the 49ers, these powerhouse teams. But, this is kind of when you get into talking about matchups, which I usually don't like to talk about, it's a bad matchup. Because usually when you use the teams with bad matchups because the team's better. It's not really like the matchup. But this is a particular instance where this is a bad matchup for New England, okay? You've got Ryan Tannehill, who, like I said, I never thought I'd, be singing the praises of Ryan Tannehill, but the guy's been lighting it up in Tennessee. Good weapons, unlike New England, and they can score. They can move the ball on you. They had Marcus Mariota last year, but I don't think this is a game where the quarterback's important. This is more about the scheme, and can you manage the game, not, take care of the ball, not get turnovers, not let them block your punts, things like that. Don't, fumble the kick return, things like that. And if you can do that, you have a really good chance of winning this game. If you can go out there and, you do your draws and your misdirections, your bunches, stacks, crossers, slants, those types of plays that New England, it feels like forever, not forever, but for the last, since I'd probably say like 2013. I watch a lot of football. That defense, which is, is now on its third coordinator, not because the coordinator's been bad, because the guys have left to take other jobs. Patricia went to Detroit, Flores went to Miami. Now it's like, I don't really think it's known who calls the plays. It's either like Bill or his son, I think, who kind of looks like, I'll call him Shaggy, with the hair there. So it's like, you've had that, but what hasn't changed, and I think the defense has been excellent in the last couple of seasons. The only time they have serious problems is when teams start doing those things, like I said, because the linebackers are slow and they don't like to, they're a team that makes great adjustments. You look at Super Bowl 51, the 28-3 game. It's like, clearly they make adjustments, but their scheme is particularly challenged by teams that can, 5 yards at a time, send the tight ends and the backs out into the flat, put the linebackers in cover, and and grind the clock. And they never. I don't think I've ever seen a New England game. Not that I've seen every single one, but when they lose, that's always a notable game when the Patriots lose because it's very rare. And so those games tend to get dissected and looked at, and it's always because of those reasons. And it feels like whenever they get in those games, they don't really have there's no second gear. They're either going to win or they're going to lose in those situations. So. I feel like I want to. And this is just to talk a little bit about Tennessee here. Tannehill, like I said, has been lighting it up. The defense can hold, but their offense has been tremendous. They got former Patriots. They got Logan Ryan and Deion Lewis, who was one of my favorite running backs. Not anymore. He was in the past, but now you've had the emergence of some of these other guys who are just lighting it up. Like Saquon and all these other guys. So, but he is a shifty back. He's not necessarily the type of guy I would worry about. What I would be worried about, if I were playing the Titans, if I were, New England in this game, is I would be worried about Derrick Henry. Because Derrick Henry, you talk about matchups, is the type of guy the Patriots have always had problems stopping. Big, heavy, physical runner. A guy who, when he gets going, he's a freight train. When he gets momentum, he's big, he's heavy. He gets low to the ground, and he's a force. It's like getting hit by a bus, And those are the types of guys New England always has problems with. It's not necessarily, the small, fast guys, because, you can kind of stack the box, be on top of them. But the heavy guys, line up, 7 yards back, and you take the hand off, and by the time you hit the hole, you're, like a snowplow coming through. It's tough, and New England has had trouble stopping guys like that. You saw earlier in the season, Ezekiel Elliott in the Dallas game. You saw in the Cincinnati game. I don't know why I'm blanking on the guy's name. what the hell's his name? Joe Mixon, who, I mean, you can you can kind of debate, the morals of Joe Mixon as much as you'd like. But anyways, you get the idea. Those types of backs, like the Tennessee Titans, have the blueprint to beat the Patriots. They're going in there. And the other big factor here you have to consider is Mike Vrabel is not one of the, like, I'd say, almost every coach. I mean, some of these guys are gone now. Coughlin was one of these few guys in the NFL that would not, like, piss himself when he saw Bill. Like, a lot of these coaches, like Tomlin and these other guys, they see Bill, like, you see, like, Pete Carroll in the Super Bowl, like, oh, what are we going to pass? What are we going to do? They're not ready to go, and they kind of get McVay, Sean McVay in the Super Bowl last year is, he's like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you, coach. And he's like, and Bill's like staring him down on the sideline. Like, guys who just can't match wits with Bill. Vrabel's not one of these guys. Former Patriots player, played under Bill for a long time. Tough defensive player, he knows what you have to do. You know what I mean? He knows how it works. And he's not going to get intimidated. Like, I remember that game last year, like the Patriots tried like the pass to the quarterback, to Brady, and then it didn't work, and then the Titans did it, and it did work, and he can match wits. I feel like the few other guys that are like that are Harbaugh, maybe Sean Payton, but they're few and far between. But I feel like the Titans have the matchup, or have what you need to beat New England in this game. I want to pick the Titans to win this game, but I can't do it, just because I cannot see the Patriots losing on a freaking wild card weekend to the Tennessee. And I know these aren't your grandmother's Tennessee Titans, but they're not like the friggin' like 2002 Tennessee Titans either. You know what I mean? Like, it's not exactly what's his name? Was it McNair? Was it Steve McNair? I kind of forget. Rest in peace. Yeah, Steve McNair. Rest in peace, buddy. It's not those Titans either, but it's tough. It's a tough thing because I feel like they have everything they need. I just don't see it happening because I feel like New England can't lose on Wild Card Weekend. Last time they lost on Wild Card Weekend was the last time they played on Wild Card Weekend, which was 2009, but that was the Ravens, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Harbaugh. Was it Flacco? Yeah, it was Flacco. Yeah, it was all that. I mean, and that's not the Tennessee Titans, but I just can't see this one happening. I feel like New England's gonna, and I feel like the fact that they're playing on Wild Card Weekend for the first time in 10 years is a real, and the fact that you lost to the Dolphins, which I wish I could talk about that here. I might as well. The fact you lost to the Dolphins, well, actually, I don't really need to, because the reason why they lost to the Dolphins is because they didn't take the Dolphins seriously like they do every year, which is why they lose, or like they don't every year, which is why they lost, and why they always lose to the Dolphins at the end of the year, it feels like. They don't take the Dolphins seriously. The Dolphins did what you need to do, throw the crosses and the slants and work the linebackers and exploit the flaws. That's what the Dolphins did, and that's why they won. And that's why the Patriots are playing a wild card weekend, which I feel like is a gut punch because it's like, wow, we haven't sucked this bad since 2009. The guys are gonna, it's a veteran team. They'll play better and they'll win this game. After that, you got to go to the Chiefs. So, not really sure how that one's gonna go. But anyways, yeah, I mean, like last year, New England with a better offense than they have this year. It'll be maybe a slightly worse defense. I mean, that defense was legit down the stretch. With a slightly better offense, had a bye week and had to go to Kansas City. But like after the bye in a home game where they just blew out the Chargers, which wasn't difficult, had to go to Kansas City with a better offense. Which this year, no bye week, worse offense, no home. Or maybe I guess But they're gonna live to fight another day. It's just I think that day's coming next week. So I have New England winning this game. Next game up Sunday, 1 o'clock, Minnesota Vikings at the New Orleans Saints. This video is going longer than the ones where, it's like, you got every team, when you got, like, all 32 teams playing. But, anyways, playoffs, we got some good analysis here. Minnesota Vikings at the New Orleans Saints. Not really much to talk about here. The New Orleans Saints are going to blow out the Minnesota Vikings. The only reason the New Orleans Saints are even playing on Wild Card Weekend is the fact that the NFC is friggin' stacked. This is, like, the most... usually you have these top-heavy divisions, like it's the AFC, and you got the Patriots, the Ravens, the Steelers, and then all the other suck teams. And then in the NFC, you'll have the Saints and the Seahawks and the Panthers and whoever. This year, you've got the Seahawks, you've got the Saints, you've got the 49ers, you've got the Packers, you've got the Eagles, you've got the... Like, every team's really damn good in the NFC. And it came down to the wire last week between the 49ers and the Seahawks, basically, to decide the NFC West and to decide the playoff order of the NFC. Like, until the very last game of the year, the thing wasn't even decided. And so you had the Saints go from, like, 2 to... I don't even know what they are now, 3 or 5. I couldn't even tell you. But that's the only reason why the Saints are playing on wild card weekend here, is because the NFC, like any other year, most other years the Saints at 13-3 would be the number 1 seed in the NFC. But this year, yeah, it's not the case, just because of how stacked it is and the tiebreakers and the way things work. New Orleans Saints, it's at home. New Orleans Saints will have no problem beating the Minnesota Vikings. Week 17. The Saints went out there and completely just destroyed the Panthers 42-10. Like, just embarrassed them in Week 17. So it's it's one of those things. I mean, it's kind of just math at this point. Who's going to win? It's not really like much to get into here. There's no matchup. I mean, the Saints are much better team. It's just kind of the peculiarities of the schedule and the tiebreakers and everything this year, which is why the Saints find themselves even playing on a wild card weekend. It's a home game, shouldn't have any problems winning this game. But the Saints need to do is go out there, rack up the points, and then play some stout defense and rest your starters, because as good as the Saints are, they do not have the benefit of the bye week to rest and strategize and do all of that. So you want to get the win here. Don't overexert yourself, and you're going to have to get ready for, let me see, who are they going to be playing? It's either going to be San Francisco or the Packers, I believe. Yeah, it's either one of those teams. So it's, oh, wow, they wiped out the playoff picture here. Yeah, but I think it's going to be the, it's either the Packers or the Seahawks. Well, anyways. Or I'm sorry, it's either the Packers or the 49ers. The 49ers are the number 1 seed in the NFC. So you are kind of, no matter how good your team is, you are dealing with that, which, Saints are a really good team. I mean, they can deal with it as well as anybody. Veteran team, good coaching, great quarterback, great offense, good defense. Should be able to deal with that. Next game up, I mean, and then, look, the Vikings, they're going to put forth a valiant effort. This isn't going to be like 2 years ago. There's not going to be like any of that, friggin' Lattimore, miracle, friggin' play at the end there, So I wouldn't have to worry about. I'm not going to be worrying about that this time around. Last game, Sunday afternoon, Seahawks at Philly. So this was actually interesting. If this was a few weeks ago, I would be like, oh yeah, Seattle's going to blow them out. Are you kidding me? Like, Seattle was in the running for like the top seed, and like it was, Seahawks were looking great. And then the team turned into a mash unit. They lost, I think like both running backs. You had to bring back Marshawn Lynch, who looks like this ain't like 20. It's not like 2013, 2014 Marshawn Lynch, but the guy, he can still pound the ball, can still run, still good, still serviceable. But they're dealing with injuries all around. I mean, really, it's a one-man team. It's Russell Wilson. The team's going to go as far as Russell Wilson can take them. I mean, he can keep pulling. He's going to have to keep pulling these plays out of his keister. I don't think you're going to be able to win this game and then the divisional round and then like beat New Orleans or San Francisco, whoever that's going to be. They're too many injuries in order to go that far and not have the bye week and not, you look at that Sunday night game, which, pretty good game there. They made it competitive until the very end, 26-21 49ers over the Seahawks there in that game. But the NFC West was, they held on to it until the very end there. So Russell Wilson's played, I mean, if not for Lamar Jackson, you'd have to give him the MVP. So can they beat Philly? They're going to go into Philly. It's a tough place to play, but this is not Philly of 2 years ago. This is a different, Philly team that, is just not, it's not there. The offense this year has not been great. The defense has been, so I think the Seahawks should be able to go in there and, and win this game. But, they're dealing with injuries. They're going from the West Coast to the East Coast, which never really goes well for teams. It's like a somewhat short week. They play Sunday night. They're playing Sunday afternoon. It's really not a lot of things here that are not working in the Seahawks' favor. Philly is not the easiest place to play. You look at the odds for this game, which in kind of games like this, it's kind of complicated. You have to look at kind of what it helps to kind of go to the odds. You have Philadelphia favored by 1 as of right now in this game. And just for reference, you've got Houston, who I picked favored by 3. You've got New England, who I picked favored by 5.5, and you've got New Orleans, who I picked favored by 8. And this is the first time I've even looked at these odds, so just not to have any sort of bias here. I think what this is going to come down to here is everything favors the Eagles in this game, except for the Eagles themselves. I feel like the Seahawks are a better team until the injuries really kind of devastated them here. I feel like what this game is going to come down to is, can this Seahawks team, how do I say this, somehow magically summon down the spirit of the Legion of Boom 2013-2014 Seahawks team and hold the Eagles to 16 points. And you got to hope that Russell Wilson can make some crazy plays and pull this one off, or maybe even make some great plays at the beginning, get out to a lead. Maybe Marshawn Lynch can run the ball, and if your defense can. Put it this way: a lot more things need to go right for Seattle than need to go right for Philly in this game, and I feel like it's such a close call here. Which is obviously why they're favored by 1. But if I had to pick one in this game, I'd have to go with. Man, this is a tough game right to call. I'm going to have to go with the Seahawks winning this game just because they were able to, almost beat the 49ers on Sunday night with, their whole team hurt. So, and the 49ers are a way better team than the Philadelphia Eagles. So, because they, it ended up being a 5-point game that they almost won at the end, the fact that they're able to, they have that type of mettle and resolve and can get into games like that and hang around until the end. If they could do it against the 49ers, they should be, which I'm pretty sure was that in Seattle? That kind of has that is a factor. Seattle is one of those stadiums that like Denver and New England and Kansas City. That's a tough place to play. And yeah, it was in Seattle, so you do have to account for that. I've got the Seahawks winning this game. I feel like if the defense can go in there, maybe get a turnover, they should be able to steal the game, because I have a lot more confidence in Pete Carroll and Wilson and their offense than I do in Peterson and Wentz and their offense, which has not lived up to expectations this year. If you can get a turnover, play good defense, maybe get out to a lead, Lynch can run the ball, if you can turn into his old self, I feel like the Seahawks should be able to get out of there with the win. After that, all bets are off, but I feel like I got the Seahawks win this game. All right, guys, let's get into for the picks for the wild card round. We'll be back next week with the divisional round picks. Can't wait to see who wins this weekend. Other than that, until next time, that was it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching.